To call this meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. It is Thursday, December 7th, 2017, 7 o'clock. First up, we have town moderator Doug Stewart.
Real-time town moderator.
Sorry.
For a discussion about how the town meeting went, special town meeting went.
I thought it went well. A little long, but
Well, those things happen.
everyone got their say, I thought, which was good. Certainly a big group of people that felt strongly about the issue.
Yeah.
I guess two things that I had as a perspective. Well, one thing was just procedurally, I regretted that we got into discussions about amendments before they even got their presentation done. So it seemed to me, just structurally, that kind of went the wrong way a little bit at first. But we got it back on track.
Well, the first one was necessary because of the dollar amounts.
Right.
Right.
Right, but then we got into the discussion about changing the word, who the
Right,
conservation
right.
restriction would be on. That
Right.
should come after the presentation.
Yeah.
So, the good thing was that we had discussed the amendment situation prior to the meeting, so I was anticipating and knew what was gonna happen, had discussed it with our town council, who was very helpful, Bob Givens. And we knew what we were,
Right.
how we were gonna handle it, and that, went pretty well, I think. One thing that Pam and I noticed was that there were over 350 people who signed in, 352, something like that, and the two votes were
306 and
318, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it didn't feel like people left, but probably some did.
I noticed a couple were trickling
Yeah, I
out.
know.
There was
Yeah.
some.
Yeah.
And also some people just don't vote.
Right.
Yeah, and I guess some people don't vote, so. And I thought 350 was probably on the higher end of what I would have thought would have been there. I don't know what other people
Yeah,
thought.
no, it was a good turnout. It was a good turnout. I think one thing we need to address, and it seems to be getting progressively worse, is the microphone situation.
Yeah, yeah, it's too bad.
Is that the town's responsibility or the school department, or, because those, I mean, it was a joke.
Well, we test them, well, I shouldn't say we. Bolton Access TV comes in, tests them at 3 o'clock, they all work fine. Test them right before everybody shows up, they all work fine. They're owned by the school, by the way.
Oh,
And then the minute the auditorium fills up, they go in and out. And there's speculation as to whether everybody's, phones and electronic, who knows?
It could, yeah, that could be. I think we need to do something different.
So it is the school, they belong to the school.
They belong to
Yeah,
the
right.
school.
Look
They're
at
really
what's there now.
pitiful.
Yeah, but I think so.
I had turned mine on a little early, and the person from Bolton Community Access came in, and she was kind of upset. She said, the battery will run down. So that leads me to believe that the batteries are not terribly strong, because I only turned it on maybe 10 minutes early. It was while you were going testing, when or someone was saying it.
It wasn't me.
No, someone was testing at the
Yeah, yeah,
selectmen's
yeah.
table.
Well, I'm wondering if, since the microphones do belong to the school, but they seem to work fine for the school's purposes, and they seem to work fine during the day, and if it's
So maybe it is.
If it's town, it could be cell phones, but if it's town meeting that's suffering because of it, then I think maybe we should be consulting with Bolton Access Cable and see if Bolton Access Cable can provide microphones so the meeting can be heard, can be properly heard by people who can, rewatch it later. Because it doesn't seem to be the issue doesn't seem to impact the school.
Ah.
It seems to impact town meeting.
Right.
They're also wireless, and I wonder if, might seem kind of backwards, but the two main microphones going to those being hardwired versus wireless, and maybe having one or two wireless, but not relying on, because if there is interference being caused by something in the auditorium, it's probably because they're wireless.
Yeah, and the microphones up at the tables in the front are really only getting shifted back and forth. The two in, for citizens to speak at are in fixed positions. So you really only need a wireless in the event of someone who can't
Right.
approach the microphone.
Right.
Other than that, wired microphones would work, be more dependable.
That's true.
We should probably have this as an agenda item. Maybe
Yeah, I
in
do think
January.
we should
Yeah.
see what we can do to
Yeah,
improve
yeah,
that.
yeah.
We'll put that on the particular list for future items.
You know, what I'd like to point out about town meeting was your comments about behaving in the events of when people speak, whether you agree or disagree, how to behave, individual votes for amendments, how to behave and not behave. But when the final result was announced, there was not a single person applauding. And I think that the town as a whole deserves credit for that. I think it was a classy end to an emotional evening.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a lot of people saying, this is part of being in a community, and we still want to be in a community. So we're just going to respect the other point of view and, you know, go on to the next issue that we have to face together. So I was very pleased with the way that
Yeah, I agree.
that behavior. I was very pleased to see that behavior.
Yeah, I thought the decorum was very good, really. You know, there were a lot of people who wanted to speak, which is why I didn't really want to cut people off. You know, at some point, you do sort of get to the point where you say, okay, well, we've heard that argument, let's only new arguments, but I think just about everyone who wanted to speak did speak. And
Yeah.
it was fully vetted and debated.
Any other comments? Mr. True?
Ken Troop from Meadow Road. I wanted to mention one thing because Kristen DeJohn couldn't be here tonight. That's a positive that has come out of the town meeting. There was a lot of chatter on Facebook in the days following the town meeting, either about people who couldn't attend because their spouse was having to babysit, or people who had to leave. And the count of, well, you mentioned earlier, the 20 or 30 people who had to leave. Anyway, the 8th graders, led by Liz Hess at the Girl Scout troop there, has offered to provide on-site babysitting services for all future town meetings. And they are going to be talking with Pam if they haven't already. They are going to generate a list of babysitters that are available for home sitting, and want to talk about finding a room in the school where those who are on site could be, and to ensure that there's Wi-Fi for the kids to be able to do homework or whatever during that. It seems to me that that would be an outstanding thing to do. So I just wanted to let you folks know of that. I don't know what approvals are needed exactly, and I believe once they've talked with Pam, they're going to talk with the principal and see what they can arrange at the school. But it seems to me that that's a real positive that's come out of that.
It's great.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Moderator.
Thank you.
Yep.
One other thing, John, would it be okay to ask a question related to the content of the meeting as opposed to the process of the meeting?
Sure.
I guess, in retrospect, I'm wondering why the selectmen approved applying for the grant. Because it was very clear that really nothing had changed since the spring as far as views within the advisory committee certainly and others toward these nice-to-have sort of purchases. It would have saved a huge amount of effort if the selectmen had just decided this is not the time to be taking up a purchase like this. We can't afford to do it, so we're not going to apply for a grant. Once we applied for the grant, that kept everything going. And so I guess I would ask you to think about that, particularly for future issues, if anything like this comes up, is that there are events that trigger schedules and meetings and other things like that that could be stopped if people chose to stop them. And I'm not suggesting to not have town meetings or anything like that, but I'm just saying that there's an instance where things would have been done differently had there been no grant application versus if there were. And I think, were I an opponent, I think I would probably be saying the same thing, because they all went to the meeting, not necessarily because they wanted to, but because they knew this was coming up. It wouldn't have had to come up if the grant hadn't been applied for. So I don't know if anybody wants to
May I say
comment on
something in
it, but
defense
that's
of
a question that's occurred to me at least.
I'd like to say something in defense of the Board of Selectmen. The Board of Selectmen who approved going for the grant was a different composition than the board at the time of town meeting. So it's not the same, it's not apples to apples. The board,
I agree.
the board was not the same at the beginning as it was at the end, so you can't compare it.
I agree with that.
And not only can you not compare it, you know, there was never any time that the Board of Selectmen voted to either sponsor the article, nor was there any town department or committee who wanted to sponsor the article.
Absolutely, I understand that as well.
Okay, now, but so allowing the grant to go forward, and I believe you asked an earlier question earlier this year, why the Board of Selectmen voted to allow for the $3,900 to be spent to move forward on whatever it was spent on, and it was just to keep the process moving along. So we allowed that process to continue in whatever manner it was going to continue. So I mean, I don't think it's fair to say that the Board of Selectmen should have stopped this. The Board of Selectmen allowed the process to continue, and certainly one of the absolute legal and positive ways that this proceeded was the way it proceeded. So you know, I don't think it's unfair characterization to pin this on the Board of Selectmen that we should have stopped anything. You know, a citizen's petition is a perfectly legal and valid way to move forward with this. And quite frankly, I think it was probably a better way to do it, because if the Board of Selectmen had just said, sure, go ahead, have a special town meeting, there probably would have been less discussion, and 75 people would have showed up at town meeting and voted to approve the purchase. And I think there was much more conversation, there was much more discourse, there was much more back and forth, and it got the issue out, and to have a much larger audience reflect and comment on it. And that is reflective of having the 300+ people, you know, at basically a 2-article town meeting. One was to approve $277, and then this. So I think it was an absolutely perfect way to move forward, and quite frankly, I think, you know, more of these kinds of things should go in that route. Because if, you know, we just settle back and say, sure, have a special town meeting or whatever, and the Board of Selectmen sponsors something, that actually causes less conversation and less discourse. So I think it was a perfect way to go, and I don't necessarily agree with the characterization that the Board of Selectmen should have stopped anything.
No, I didn't say they should. I asked whether they could have or thought about it at the time. That's all I was asking. No, everything you said is correct. And I didn't mean to impugn any of the process that occurred after that, only really to point out that, hey, this was an event that didn't need to, that had it been done differently, could have played out in a different way.
Could very well have been, Ken. But I mean, you know, if the Board of Selectmen, you know, said, gee, you know, we don't think it's a good thing to do, and I think implicitly by the fact that there wasn't an endorsement or a vote to sponsor the article was kind of implicit, the fact that we maybe weren't necessarily 100% behind it.
Yeah, I understand.
So, but you know, it allowed the citizens petition route to continue and, you know, go its natural course.
Thank you, Doug, for coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks a lot. See you in the next meeting.
See you in May.
So we have, is this a joint meeting with the planning board? To
Yes.
appoint Peter Driscoll as a full member of the planning board? Come on up, Eric. Any other members?
Good evening, gentlemen.
So when Dave Gansway left open a spot. Peter's been the associate for a year now, so it made sense to, we already voted him in our meeting, but it seemed like we had to have a roll call vote, so, spent a year learning the ropes, I guess, and he's gonna be a full-time member, and we're advertising for the associate spot. We actually have 2 or 3 people interested already.
Cool.
Great. Peter, can you just give us what's the last year been like as an associate member? What's your interest in the planning board?
Sure. So, this is my first experience on any, town board. I moved to Bolton in 2015, and as Eric said, then I joined the board for meetings for about a year. So it's been a good learning experience. Everyone on the board has a real strong knowledge of the town and the bylaws, and so I've enjoyed the meetings and the discussions. So it's been good, and I look forward to hopefully helping the town.
Super. Great. Do we have a motion? Any other comments or questions before we have a motion?
Make a motion that we appoint Peter Driscoll as a full member of the planning board.
Second?
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Peter?
Welcome aboard.
Well done. Thank you very much. Thank you for volunteering.
Thank you.
You got another one. We pulled another one in. Yay.
Future selectmen.
So we have a request for permission to hold a Shakespeare performance on May 18th and 19th, 2018 at the Town Common.
Peter Murphy is here from
Hi,
Maple
Peter.
I'm here from Michael O'Leary. I have a handout as well. Just a little. You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you. I am the theater director at the Imago School in Maynard, and we were requesting permission to hold a production of As You Like It by William Shakespeare on the Bolton Town Common at the Rob Held Amphitheater on May 18th, so next year. And the rain date is May 19th in case it rains that day, from 5 to 9 p.m. The Imago School is a private school that is classically based, and it has it has a history of an excellent theater program, and it's been an honor to take that up. And it will be performed by the 7th and 8th graders. Especially, we'll be holding a performance at early May at the Maynard High School. But we really want to give these 7th and 8th graders, the upper school of the Imago School, a real Shakespearean theatrical experience outside, no mics. We really want to be able to give them that, as we really believe it will help them to increase their experience of theater, and especially of Shakespeare, because that's how it was done 500 years ago, as Shakespeare did. And it's free, and it will be free and open to the public. Voluntary donations will be accepted, but no tickets or anything. We also would, in addition to that, we are requesting if we could have a potluck that will be provided by all the families of the Imago School that will be held after the performance.
Fine with me.
Sounds good. Sounds like some good programming.
I think it sounds like a good program, and you to be commended for doing it. It's unclear to me why the selectmen should be making this decision instead of, this is not on you, this is more of a question to the other selectmen. Why the selectmen are making this decision instead of the Parks and Recreation Commission. it seems that that's an elected body who's supposed to be managing these kinds of events on those resources of the town. And I don't think we should be, it just seems like we should defer to them on this particular issue and similar issues.
Well, I think, if you recall, typically like the 4th of July event, Park and Rec will come to us and ask permission to hold it, so.
Doesn't that involve traffic issues, however? Isn't
Well-
that the reason they do that? I mean, if this involves some kind of traffic issue, I would agree that particular part of it should come to the selectmen.
Mhm.
But in terms of just the use, the scheduling, yeah, communicating with the other people in the center of town as to how they feel about this kind of event, I think that's Parks and Rec's responsibility.
Karen, you're here, what do you think?
As for the 4th of July, we secured approval from the selectmen because we did close down the street for the
Right.
kids' bike parade. But for instance, Easter, we don't come to the selectmen
Mhm.
because we don't have to use the streets
Yeah.
for any way. So if the common is now as of December 1, a town property, it would be scheduled in Parks and Rec, I would say.
Okay, that's fine with me.
Don, you want to weigh in on that?
Well, this is obviously new because we just closed on the property this week. And Karen is correct that normally, and Bob is correct, normally Parks and Rec would weigh in on something like this. It was, I think the timing of the closing of the common wasn't really considered when this came forward, you know. And when the request came from Meg, the trust still did own the common. So we kind of hit the
Yeah.
hit the transition period, if you will. I would say going forward, absolutely, things should be going to Park and Rec. And when is your next meeting, Karen?
I think it's gonna be the first Monday in January. I'm still working out the details for the commission.
So I think if Parks and Rec didn't object, the board could vote tonight, but if Parks and Rec is going to end up managing the process, it probably would make the most sense to have Parks and Rec.
Let me ask, if you don't get a decision until January, is that going to be adverse to your program?
Not at all. No, that should be fine. It wouldn't be against it at all.
But we have him here tonight. He's made the effort.
Yeah.
Do you have an objection to us approving this
She
one
can't
event?
speak for the
I
whole
can't speak
committee.
for the commission.
Commission.
Well, why don't we just, let's make a motion to approve subject to your meeting and.
I mean, I can't imagine that anyone would have an issue.
Yeah.
I think there are, we're looking at different types of fee schedules for out-of-town groups using our properties, because we do have so many nice properties in town. That's a consideration. We now have the common, as more groups want to use it, and scheduling that both, and people would have preference, obviously. So I think there's a lot of considerations to account for as well going forward. I don't think that would limit, a Shakespearean play that's happening on the Common in May. But it could, as more people find out about the property and want to book it, those are some considerations we should probably.
Oh, yeah, you're absolutely right, absolutely. Well, why don't I just make a motion that, to approve the request to hold the Shakespeare performance on May 18th or 19th, 2018 on the Town Common, subject to the Parks and Recs Commission meeting and, their subsequent approval or whatever.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Okay.
Against? Thank you,
Thank you
Mr.
very
Moore.
much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick question. That means I should go approach the Parks and Rec, is that correct?
I think they're gonna have a vote. I don't think
Okay.
you have to
I
go,
don't have to go. Okay.
but.
Yeah, I
Well-
think we have their information.
Okay.
I mean, if you can send it to the Parks email
Sure.
address.
Yes, I can give you this right here.
Sure.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
sir.
Good night.
Thank you.
We have a request for signs at 626 Main Street for Bolton Cleaners and Tailors. Hello, sir.
Good evening, how are you?
Nice to meet you.
Good evening.
Hello.
Nice to meet you, pleasure.
Pleasure. Very nice to meet you. Very nice
Good
to meet you.
evening. Welcome.
So, we have a picture of the sign. It says Bolton Cleaners and Tailors, has two nice needles on either side. Looks like it's gonna go over the porch.
And I have the color copy, is that the actual?
Yeah, this is true.
It's nice, I like that.
Looks great. Looks good to me.
Yeah, no.
Which, for everybody at home. Can you tell us just quickly about your business? You're on television. It's a good chance to talk about your business if you'd like. If you'd like.
We're gonna open the cleaner business
Mhm.
and tailoring. And she's best for tailoring, so
Wonderful.
just new. So come check it out. Check us out, please.
Check it out. Great, we will. When do you open?
Probably January.
January.
Yes.
Wonderful, wonderful. We need a tailor.
Yes, she's the best.
Great, well, I think everything looks nice, I think the color is nice, so
Mhm.
I have
It's a
no,
very
no
nice
no
sign.
questions.
I don't either.
Okay. You good with it, Bob?
I'm fine.
And then I'll make a motion that we approve the request for the Bolton Cleaners and Tailors at 626 Main Street.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Good luck.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Where do you live? Okay, thanks.
Next up, we have two things related to Country Cupboard at 476 Main Street. First, we have a request to change the manager on the liquor license for Country Cupboard.
Good evening, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you tonight.
You too. How are you? Nice to see you. How are you? Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Oh, there we are.
Hi, Michelle. Nice to see you.
It's one of those Marx Brothers movies.
Hi, how are you?
So where should we start?
So, you can just introduce yourselves for people who don't, new to town, who don't know you.
I'm Jane Hood from the Country Cupboard.
And I'm Tim Hill from the Country Cupboard.
And I'm Michelle Tuck from Tuck and Tuck Architects.
Great.
I'm here for the second portion of
So the change of manager is a very pro forma process. It just requires a vote of approval from the Board of Selectmen.
So we're changing it to your name? Or-
To my son's name.
Okay.
My husband passed away this past year, and it was originally in his name.
Mhm.
Tim has been managing the store more than 5 or 6 years. Probably should have been in his name.
Okay. Do we have any comments about that?
Then I'll make a motion that we would approve the request to change the manager on the liquor license for Country Cupboard.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Okay.
against? We have the form here.
Yes.
Yeah, we'll do that with the,
Okay.
Great. And next up is, we have site plan review, including approval for the proposed facade. We have Michelle back here from Tuck and Tuck.
Thank you, yes. And I'm not sure how much detail you want me to go into. Sounds like. all
Yeah,
of
we'd
it.
love to
Okay.
see it.
All
We'd love
right.
to see your work.
Okay, would you mind giving me these over around? I wasn't sure. So, I'm sure you've heard, this is, oh, right here, would be, is that okay for the cameras if it sits right here?
Sure.
Yeah. I'm sure you've heard we've been.
Excuse me, but if you put it like behind you,
Where I
there's a
couldn't
camera
see.
in the center that can pick up on it and people.
Ah, how's that?
We'll see, yeah, maybe that.
Okay. And I'll start with a little bit of a summary, because we haven't been here before, but we've been all around town. So I'll backtrack for just a minute. So you've probably heard that we have been, that Jane has been talking with Dunkin' Donuts for a little while to get their business within the country cupboard. And that process through the planning board happened 6 months ago or so, where it was determined that the amount of square footage that she was selling coffee and pastries and all that stuff could be kind of converted to the square footage that Dunkin' Donuts could use within the country covered space. So those calculations were done, and she has been talking with Dunkin' Donuts for a while now, getting all of that worked out, and we've finally gotten all of that worked out so that the interior will be renovated such that when you go in the regular front door that you go in, you've got Subway on the left, as it always is, and then country covered in the middle, and Dunkin' Donuts on the far right. And because that renovation work was going to happen inside with Dunkin' Donuts, Jane wanted to take the opportunity to renovate the inside of the rest of the country cupboard. So new floors and ceilings and display racks, etc. Because Dunkin' Donuts needed to have a sign outside, Jane wanted to take the opportunity to renovate the front of the building, right? We've got to put the sign somewhere. So you can see how this is going. And we have the existing building, for anyone who doesn't remember, there's a 2-story space that has the other uses in it, and then the country cupboard takes up almost the entire first 1-story space with Bank of America, just in a bit of that. And she had a nice big sign existing with Subway and country cupboard. So what we wanted to do was get a good spot for Dunkin' Donuts, and I've got that here too, and kind of dress it up as we go. So the building would be re-sided, which hasn't been sided in a long time, so that's a good thing. And let's see, I think we're probably better off going with this one. The 2-story space, well, let's start over here. So this is existing country cupboard with some gable dormers added on to the outside, so tactical, framed over the existing roof, similar to the existing sign. Let's just separate this out. That's all framed over also. And then we'll put a true shed dormer in the middle of that space so we can get some high natural light in. If you remember, the first 10 feet or so of that space is cathedral, so we have the opportunity to get some high light in. And they've got a whole bunch of merchandise in front of the actual windows, so they're not getting light in the 1-story windows. But the main front door stays as is. There's a bit of a cover over your head, which we didn't have before, and then the country cupboard sign. And then we chose to move the signage for Dunkin' Donuts and Subway over to the side in order to have their space as well, although everyone will continue to go through that main front door. And then that new siding that I talked about, muttons on the windows, which aren't there now, to kind of try to bring it back to that Bolton aesthetic, right? And then taking the same language at the 2-story space, but also putting in a covered front porch. So there's a cover over that porch. It's an existing brick patio that's raised 18 inches or so. The covered front porch will sit over that space. The footprint will not be increased, in part so we don't squeeze the parking. And by doing that, by pulling out the existing brick patio, we get an ADA compliant ramp, which we didn't have before. It's not too out of compliant, but the codes change, and compliant stair up. So we have a covered space that will have less snow and ice and we have the compliance that is wonderful. And then the buttons on those windows again, and some trim wrapping around to just kind of try to add more detail, because if you look at the existing building, it's very stark. There aren't any trims, there's not a lot of detail in the building. So that explains the exterior renovation and the interior. I can show you a picture if you're interested in that. And then the other piece, because the other piece that we went, showed the planning board, and we were at the zoning board of appeals on Tuesday for, is a shed that they want to build in the back. And they used to have a shed in the back. This is Main Street here. Here's their building. There was a freestanding shed sitting right next to the back of the building, 10 by 20, until about 2 years ago or so.
A year ago, yeah.
A year ago. National Grid had to come in and do a whole lot of electrical work, and the shed was in the way. So the shed got removed, and she'd like to put it back again. But we don't want to put it in the same place. We don't want to create another issue, so we're proposing, instead of putting it here, to put it around the corner, kind of nestle it in there. There's a space for it, and we can make it a little bit bigger, but still have enough space for cars to go around. And we were in front of the zoning board because the entire building is within the 150-foot front yard setback. So to build a shed on the back, we have to get the approval for the front yard setback. So those are the three components to the project, all kind of built on top of each other.
And what do you store in the shed?
Bottle returns or just paper products.
Dry storage.
Dry storage.
Yeah, and they have very little since their shed was removed. It's impressive how much of a selection they have in the store, because there's no place to store it. I think it's easier to run a business when you have a little bit of storage out back.
So other than relocating where the shed is, now it'd be more of a permanent structure as opposed to, rental kind of thing. You're not really changing the footprint of the existing building. Okay.
Right, we're just adding it on, moving it over, putting it in a better spot.
What's the footprint of the shed?
It's 20 by 16, so it's 320 square feet. The previous shed was 200 square feet, so it is a little bit of an increase.
But there's already sort of a depression where that's going.
Yeah, it's less obtrusive where
Yeah.
It is
where you're
less
proposing.
Right.
So
We're all
safety,
standing-
it's
Yeah.
better, safety
Yeah.
wise.
We're all standing there saying, hey, this is a pretty good spot for it, it's better than it was before. Yeah.
Yeah.
But are there
Makes
fire
sense.
issues related to having sheds next to buildings with?
Well, so I probably shouldn't be using the word shed. It used to be a shed. It was
Okay.
freestanding, sitting a foot from the building. Now it would be an addition.
Okay.
It will be part of the building. There are not fire issues, given that it's an accessory use to the primary use of the convenience store.
Yeah, so I looked on the plan, is this the room with the sink in it, or is it the room?
No. What would this
Do you
be?
have the?
Yeah, I do.
There's an
The
existing
addition?
one right now with a sink in it.
We're not gonna have a
Yeah,
sink in
just
We
on
won't.
this, where is the storage room?
The sink is-
Yes, the sink's right there. The storage room is to the right,
So,
the new one.
and this would be the
Yeah.
new storage room.
Okay.
So if you were bringing in a whole case of whatever, you come in now, you actually come in this way and then down the hall, and there's a bit of a ramp to get to the display level. And now, instead of coming in and turning the corner, the trucks can park here and go straight in. So it'll be an easier path in, and then you either, pack on either side. So it makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's gonna look nice with the shelves on an angle.
So that was, I'll explain what's happening here. So we've got subway untouched, the existing front door. This was their counter, it's dashed here, and Duncan's gonna take a good part of it, because coffee is a long length of their counter. So they're gonna be here and Duncan's gonna be here. So if their employees are here on a raised platform at the cash register, similar to how they are now, they can look down the aisles if the aisles are angled.
Yeah.
If the aisles are straight, then they don't have that visibility anymore.
That's good.
And then the cooler will stay in the back, but it'll the configuration changes, and they're replacing almost all or all of the components. You know, this is the opportunity to do it. If you're going in and
Yeah.
doing the floor, you might as well do it.
Yeah.
That
No.
walk-in cooler is 30 years old. So.
No, it's good. Looks really good.
So did we have a letter from the planning board? Did
Yes, and they approved.
Yeah, they approved.
They approved. They recommended the.
So I just had one question about the windows.
Yes, thank you.
So is it all 3 sets of windows will be kind of blocked and have a display?
Yeah, so we were looking at what's there now. They have some pretty big windows, and they have stuff packed in front of it, right? They need that display on the back side of the cashier, and that's where these windows are now. So we thought, okay, we can probably make that better by making basically shadow boxes for those windows, so they can still have the signage, the open sign, and that kind of signage there, but we don't have to look at the back of cigarette boxes and things. Then if we go and put those, that that true shed dormer at above, and have the light coming into that cathedral space, now we've gained a lot more light than we used to have filtered through the window with all the display stuff in it. So we thought we would be better off at that point. And this window, which looks into Subway, stays a true window.
Okay.
And then the other 2 would be shadow box. Basically, if you saw through, you'd see the back of all that stuff and the Dunkin' Donuts folks scurrying around here. So we didn't think either of those were great views in. Instead, let's bring light from above.
Okay, sounds good.
Any questions or comments from the audience? Looks good. So we're ready for a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the site plan review, including approval for the proposed facade for the country cover.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Okay.
Wonderful.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Looks great.
Thank you.
A nice facelift.
Yeah, it needs it.
Have a
Have to
nice
look
holiday.
at
Yes, you as
that,
well.
it's so fun.
I know, isn't it great?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
you.
you.
Yes, thank you.
Good night now.
Good night.
Good night.
So we have Police Chief Nelson here. He's going to make a recommendation to appoint Reserve Officer Jeffrey White to the position of full-time entry-level police officer, and also to make a recommendation to execute the temporary waiver application to be submitted to the Municipal Police Training Committee for exemption from the basic police recruit training. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you again for having me on the agenda. I brought with me Jeff White, Reserve Officer. So after last meeting, I had the opportunity to put out the notice to all the candidates that were qualified to meet the requirements to get the waiver, and who wanted to be a full-time police officer with the town of Bolton. So we had 2 people that applied. They went through the hiring committee, an interview, and they had to do a writing assignment. And Jeff was selected for that position. So far, he's on board. He wants to leave his current position as a Fitchburg State police officer. He's been there 2 years now?
A year and a half.
Year and a half. He's working on his master's degree, criminal justice. He's already got his bachelor's. National Guard, Army. He's a busy guy, so I'm hoping he's still got a little bit of extra time to fill all the open shifts we have. So So right now, that's the first part of the process, bringing on a reserve to go to full-time. I have to get him appointed conditionally on all the conditions that he has to fulfill to finish this whole process. So if he's appointed tonight with the conditional offer, I ask you then to sign a temporary waiver. That will let a reserve officer work full-time for 270 days. I have to write an additional letter for exigent circumstances, whereas I can't find anybody to fill the position. I've got one deployed. I still have the open position, and it's costing an arm and a leg to backfill with overtime, all the open shifts. So once that form is signed by you or approved by you, then I send it to the MPTC, and the committee meets once a month. It's either Tuesday or Wednesday, December 19th or 20th. I've got to get that form in there, and I've got to get him on the agenda for that meeting. He doesn't have to go. They just look at all his qualifications. I send in his CPR card. I prove that he's been working for a year. And then the committee looks at it and will either approve or deny the waiver. So if we get the waiver, he can put his 2-week notice in or sooner, and I can put him on board as soon as he does that.
Sounds good.
And if I can add, I showed him the agreement. I think I sent that over to Dawn. 10 years ago, we had an agreement. Mass Chiefs of Police would write up an agreement for a situation like this, where we would sponsor a reserve officer to the full-time academy, and they would, in agreement, sign a 3-year contract to stay with the department. That was 10 years ago. We did that with the lieutenant and the detective. They both stayed, great employees, so it was a great investment. Same thing with Jeff. Now the standard is a 5-year contract. I went on to the Mass Chiefs of Police again and found it was a 5-year contract standard. Pay back the $3,000, what it's going to cost to put him in the academy, and then I have it coming down from $10,000, $8,000, all the way down to $2,000 for the final year. So if he leaves in 6 months after graduating, he's going to owe the town of Bolton $13,000. So I don't expect him to back out of this. It's kind of a little motivation to stay for a while and hang in there with us for at least 5 years. So I do have that contract.
Cool.
I'll say agreement.
And you would need to authorize me to sign that.
Okay.
This is sort of a golden handcuff, to use a police term, to keep you here for a while.
I just had a question. Mr. Wade, what is your commute like now?
I currently live in Worcester, so it's about 20, 25 minutes, depending on
Great.
traffic.
Great.
Well, works for me.
Yep.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I should make a motion for what all he said?
First, you would need a recommendation to appoint Jeff as a full-time.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we approve the recommendation from Police Chief Nelson to appoint Reserve Officer Jeffrey B. White to the position of full-time entry-level police officer.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And then please vote to authorize me on behalf of the town to sign the contract with Jeff.
So moved.
Yeah.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
And now you would vote to approve the temporary waiver application for the chief to submit.
I'll make a recommendation to approve that we execute the temporary waiver application to be submitted to the Municipal Police Training Committee for the exemption from the basic police recruit training.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Okay.
Great.
Could I get a signature before we leave? Is that possible? And then I can send the form tomorrow morning if you want me to sign that. And
Yep.
Dawn, I send that, and I can provide Linda with copies tomorrow morning.
Okay, I don't want to ruin this, so right there.
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
So if everything goes as planned, we will try to get him in the earliest academy so that we can get that process started. And we've got 270 days to accomplish that, so.
It might be.
Excuse me?
Today's the 7th.
Not the 17th.
Oh.
Just turn the 1 into a 0.
Is that how you do it? Is that how you've been doing it all these years?
You learn the tricks of the trade after a while.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, I just follow and do the same thing.
I hope it's not the 17th.
Yeah. It's harder to turn a 0 into a 1.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it, sir. Congratulations. Thank you, sir.
You already know my license plate.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thanks, Linda. I'll get you copies.
All right.
And your pictures in the post office.
Yeah.
Good night, gentlemen.
Good night. So now we have the town administrator's report.
Thank you, and tonight, back by popular demand, is the update on Minuteman. We had a building committee meeting this past Monday night. Some fairly significant events happening and about to take place. We are approaching the time where we're going to start erecting steel. The cranes are showing up on December 14th, and we're going to start erecting the steel on December 18th. The entire process will take about 3 to 4 months. Quite a bit of the concrete is already in, and we're already doing backfilling in some areas. And what else? We are out for file sub-bids right now. We've extended a week to try to make sure we get the best pricing we can, so we should have our file sub-bid pricing on December 18th. We should have the rest of the bids in by the first week of January, so the entire job should be bid, and we should have the numbers early January, which will give us quite some insight into where the project's going to be. And just as an example, we've got 2 contracts that we voted to award Monday night. First for drywall and general trades. This one was the bad news. We had budgeted We had budgeted $5,258,392, and the bids came in at $5,635,929, so a delta of roughly $400,000. But we also went out for bid for metal panels, and we had budgeted $2,277,448 and came in with a low bid of $1,883,130 for a delta of roughly $500,000. So net, we came out a little bit ahead.
That's great.
So we're off to a good start. Our experts are telling us that they're excited about the quality of the bids that they think we're going to be getting, and we're cautiously optimistic as far as the budget goes. But in the, I'd say the second meeting in January, which is January 18th, I should be able to give a pretty detailed update as to where we are on the budget. But everything's moving forward very well.
And you also had some good news about another town.
Oh, yes. It's still in progress, but there was a report, I believe it was in the Globe, if I remember correctly. I forget which newspaper I said, but talks with Watertown, it was Watertown.
Yes.
Yes, it was. Are progressing, and it's entirely possible, I don't want to be overly optimistic, but it's looking positive that potentially Watertown could join the district. And
the Minuteman District.
The Minuteman District, yes, not the Neshoba District.
The Minuteman District.
No, we have a few space issues. No, we actually don't have space issues here right now. But Minuteman has available space, and that was part of the vision. Was the hope was that we would be able to get a town such as Watertown into into the district, and it's looking positive. And that would have a significant number of kids attending and would obviously be a great boost to our assessment, just, you know, to have that many kids go there.
My understanding from the article is they already have a substantial number of students in there,
They do.
and they would in effect be replacing, was it Belmont who's dropping out of the?
Arlington.
Arlington's dropping out of the district?
I thought it was Belmont.
Belmont.
It was Belmont. Arlington
Okay.
didn't drop out, but Belmont did. No, Arlington is the largest sender that we have.
Okay.
No, it would have been disastrous if Arlington had pulled out. But no, so this is very positive. So the project really is moving forward very well, and at the moment, we're still on track for a potential September 2019 opening.
Excellent.
So when you say if Watertown joins, it would impact our assessment, is that our annual assessment or the assessment for the construction?
The annual assessment. I don't know how it would impact the assessment for the construction, because they would be benefiting from debt that we've already incurred. So that would be negotiated by the school committee. So I don't want to anticipate what the
It
school
wouldn't make
committee would
it,
do.
there's no way that would make it worse.
No, it can only be better.
It can only be better if there were a change.
That's right.
Doesn't part of the per student fee include some of the construction in there anyway?
Part of the person, if you're a member.
But they're from out of district, so they
They're
may
from out of
actually
district right now, so-
benefit financially by joining.
Okay, okay.
That's right.
Okay, I thought out of district also contributed.
Not yet. I mean, there's a concept going forward that we floated out there, but this is existing debt.
Oh, okay, all right.
So, and again, I don't want to speak for the Minuteman School Committee.
Yeah, yeah, okay.
Well, yeah, so I was at that meeting, the concept was that towns that weren't members, but who sent students would be paying an extra
fee,
to
yes.
cover the debt,
That's right.
some portion.
Some portion of the debt. A town at this point, a non-member town can't be compelled to, but if they choose not to, then the district doesn't have to accept the students. It's sort of the way it was
Yeah.
presented.
It's all good.
So unless the board has any questions, that's what I have for this evening.
Thank you, Don.
Thank you.
Now we have Board of Selectmen business, and we have a review and execute renewal of liquor licenses.
So we have all of them here tonight.
We do.
And we need them to be voted and signed tonight, but we don't release them unless everyone has met the defined criteria, such as having passed the fire inspection, the inspection that the fire department and the building inspector do, and also being not more than 4 quarters behind on any of their property taxes.
So, do we just have a quick list to go
Yes, it's
over?
right here, John.
Great.
So, we are voting to renew and execute liquor licenses for Bolton Country Cupboards, Inc. Is it Dino? Dagnalds. Great American pronunciation of a French name. Dagnalds Liquor Store, Fotini's Restaurant and Bar, Great Book Farms, Neshoba Valley Spirits, which I assume is the winery.
Yes.
The International Golf Course, and Twin Springs Holdings, Inc.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Everybody sign it, just-
Everyone, yep.
So it is December 7th.
Yes, it is.
With a 0.
Right here?
Yes, right on the right there. Bottom right.
These are very old-fashioned
They are.
licenses, all hand-filled out by you, Linda?
Yes.
He has excellent penmanship.
of booze in a little town.
Thank
Not
God.
nearly enough.
This one's, these are just the golf course ones, so they have.
Right.
So does the golf course one has the golf course on it because they can serve drinks anywhere
Yes,
on the
exactly,
course?
so the plan goes with it. Yep.
Great, okay.
Can I circle back to town administrator's report for a second?
Yeah, you got it.
While the signatures are being done, thank you.
Yes.
One thing that's not on the agenda that I just thought I should mention to the board is, right now, the meeting for December 21st has only one issue, and that would be the vote and signing of all the common victualler licenses in town. Common victualler licenses are required for any establishment serving food. And given that's the only issue that we're looking at, I would recommend to the board that perhaps we could meet at 5 o'clock on Thursday, the 21st, rather than 7, and have a 5-minute meeting to get that business done, and then the board can carry on with the rest of their evening,
It's fine with me.
if you're available.
Oh, so we meet on the 21st?
Still the 21st, but at 5 rather than 7.
Sounds good. And we're gonna lock it down to that one item?
We would.
Okay.
We would. Because we meet again January 4th, so we don't have a long lag.
Okay.
The
Sounds good.
the earliest I could be there is 6.
All right, well then, 6? Is the board okay with 6 o'clock?
6 o'clock's fine too.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, so we'll just move ahead. We have an appointment of Jem Mix to the Town Road Strategic Planning Committee.
No one's coming.
So she has a letter here.
She
I
does.
think she's attended all the meetings
Mhm.
that they've had.
And we've done the requisite advertising?
Yeah, if you remember when the board appointed the committee, Jem was on the list, but she wasn't sure if she wanted to join.
Okay.
So she has been attending all the meetings
Okay.
and has made the decision to.
Sounds good. Okay. Make a motion, we appoint Jen Mix to the Town Road Strategic Planning Committee.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Vote to accept the deed for the town common and authorize the chairman to execute the acceptance document.
2 separate issues for this.
Okay.
Rebecca's here to speak to that, to the Bonazzoli land. If there's any
Okay.
questions from the board.
No, this is the
So
town
this is
common.
the common.
Town
Oh, I
common.
beg your pardon. I went in the wrong direction. Yes, so the acceptance document has been provided to us by town council. It's a formality now that the town indeed owns the town common. The board needs to authorize the chair to accept it, to vote to sign the acceptance document, and then it will be filed accordingly.
I move we authorize the chairman to sign the acceptance document for the town common.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
There's more to
So-
closing on a piece of property than I ever
I sign
realized.
here, write my name out.
Yes, yes, and then I
below.
will be notarizing your signature.
Okay.
It was the first time since I've been here that the town purchased a piece of property, and there was definitely more to it from a
Yeah.
municipal level than you might think.
There we go.
Thank you.
You have a stamp?
At the office.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
And we have Rebecca here,
Yes.
our conservation agent.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you tonight?
Good, how are you?
Thank you.
Our chair Brian Bailey was supposed to be coming, and I don't see him, but I'm confident on doing this myself as well, but he may walk in last minute.
Okay.
Would you like me to give a brief overview, or
Oh,
Don?
that'd be great.
So I was approached by Deborah Bonazzoli. She has now become the owner of this property after her late husband, August Bonazzoli, had passed. This project had actually been visited in the past from some research that Linda and I had done, and it seems that it was the cost associated with it, and the suggestion from advisory at the time was find a self-funded way of acquiring this property. The property is located at 2D20, which should be in your packets. If not, I do have a map. It does
Right
buffer,
here?
yes, and it does buffer Danforth Brook, as I'm sure you're familiar with at times.
So
Well, at times.
this is 495?
So this is 85 Hudson Road.
85, okay.
And this is Danforth Brook, which
Yeah.
is shown a little bit more clear in this. There are two small wetland areas that encroach on the boundary. They're about here. This property does abut the 100 acres of about 100 acres of Century Mill Estates open space. And along with that, this is a property that the commission had held a site visit on. David Calcagni, our new member, and our chair were out on the site to review it. It is pristine. There was some logging done historically, and historically meaning a few years ago. So the only disturbance that is there is a few plastic chairs that were left there by someone I don't know. And then along with the past used logging roads, which is just one that actually you can follow it all the way up into Century Mill Estates. The only significant difference, but the Conservation Commission didn't see it as a negative on this property versus our other properties throughout town, is it's strictly for wildlife. So it'd be a wildlife refuge or a wildlife sanctuary, not for passive recreation. So no trails would go on this property. The commission saw that that was still a positive because the Century Mill Estates does allow for passive recreation in the form of trails, which abuts it. So you basically be walking by a feature property.
But didn't you just describe that there effectively is a trail?
Correct. So
On that, just no new trails would be created?
correct,
Or
and that
maintained.
or
Okay.
maintained. So that would be allowed to be grown in.
Okay.
And used for, of course, emergency access, if for some reason there is ever an emergency and there needed to be access through the property, that's of course allowed.
Is there, so there's access to this property through Century Mill. Is there any other access to this property?
So how we were able to access the property after being given permission by Deborah Bonazzoli is through this property that abuts Hudson Road, and that is her property as well. She is currently looking to donate that property as well through the state process. But at the end of that process that she'll go through to benefit her taxes, she will be looking for the state to turn it over to the town.
Okay.
But currently we're just, and that's 2D15, currently we're just talking about 2D20.
Right, but currently it's effectively private
Yes.
property, which doesn't make the other piece you're talking about any less appealing. I was just curious.
Yep,
Okay.
I just wanted to make that clear because the
Yeah.
commission had similar questions.
Okay.
Yep.
That's
Well,
good.
I've been on the Century Mill Trail, the trailhead, and to Danforth Falls. It's beautiful. I hope people are using it. It's a really nice area. It's a generous gift, and it's really nice that it abuts, that almost 100 acres. So your board voted on it, or?
Yep, so we had voted at our last meeting this past Tuesday to recommend to the selectmen that we in fact accept, or that the selectmen in fact accept the land gift. There is, I don't know, it's not included in the package.
What?
The
There was what
contingency.
condition? The conditions.
Yes, so,
I saw it.
I will explain.
Well, there's a letter from
Yes.
you that mentions,
Yes.
but we don't have a copy of the Conservation Commission
The minutes you mean?
minutes or something that say we approve this with the reservations and stuff like that.
Okay,
I don't know
and
that
I
that's
can
a
get those
showstopper,
to
is
you.
No, it's not.
No.
And I can get those to you, I can forward them to
No,
you
that's
on
fine.
Monday.
If it's not a showstopper, it's fine.
And you can also, I can have the commission sign a document if you want a formalized letter in that sense as well. For this property, one thing that is important to note is Deborah has asked that we be mindful of a timeline that she had proposed, that we have a title search done to basically make sure that there is a clear title, as it seems that there would be, because the only disturbance, like I said, is the logging that was done previously. With that being said, she would like it to be done within the third week of December, and town council has reached out to say it is potentially a lengthy process. I don't do title searches myself, so I trust them on it. And so Deborah Bonazzoli was referred that information as well, and had proposed this contingency that, do you want me to read the contingency? Is that
If you
necessary?
just summarize
Or just
it.
summarize it? So basically, it's saying that she's going to transfer and furthermore donate the property to the town contingent upon a clean title report. And in the event that there's not, which she is more than sure that it will come back clean, she will take the land back without penalty or any implications to the town. And that, after speaking with Dawn, it seemed that was a reasonable way to put things so that we would meet her timeline along with her confidence in it being clean.
So that's a tax consideration.
Correct.
It is. So we're waiting on town council to.
We're waiting for the final title report.
Okay.
But it's, because of this letter, it's acceptable for the board tonight to vote to accept this.
Mhm.
You won't be, and that will allow her to meet the timeline that the
Okay.
tax issues.
Great.
And the letter removes any commitment on the part of the town if the title doesn't come back clean.
So would a proper motion for this be to accept the donation contingent upon a title search being completed by December 31st?
And coming back with a clean title, yes.
Coming back with the title search, having a clean title by December 31st?
Yes.
I'm ready to make a motion.
You just did.
Okay.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Rebecca, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Well,
Good to see you, Brian. How are you?
Good
Timing
job.
is
Hoping to
perfect.
be here, like,
Nice to
laid
see you.
plans, I was like, oh,
Glad you could,
Jack.
Should they,
I'm sorry?
so this is the original contingency,
Mhm.
and we had decided that the chair will sign it. Is this
Yeah.
something that we would wait to sign, or we'll sign this?
No, I think the chair should sign it now because it's been voted, and it just won't be, it won't proceed if the title doesn't come back.
Okay. I would ask.
Thank
Please sign that.
you. Sure.
A lot of signatures this time of year.
Please thank Deborah.
I will.
That's really
Yep.
generous.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good night now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brian, for your work.
Yeah.
No, the site visit, I
That's
mean.
it, yeah.
The site visit.
Thank you.
Good night now.
So we have, next item is execute the memorandum of agreement number 1 between the town of Bolton and the Teamsters Union Local 170, call firefighters unit for FY 2017 to 2019.
So this is the culmination of a fairly lengthy negotiating process, which I think was done very professionally and amicably by the fire union. The fire union has met as a body to ratify the contract. They have signed, their agent has signed I'm sorry, not the contract, the MOU. So now, MOA, sorry. And so now it's the selectmen's turn to sign the MOA. By doing so, it commits us to the terms of the agreement. It still needs to be turned into contract language, but the MOA is binding. And it has in it exactly what's been agreed to by the Board of Selectmen and the union.
Good night.
Night.
Good night.
So we have the document
Yep.
here.
We do.
So do we have to vote on that, or?
Yes, please.
I'm fine with it, took a look at it, and it's everything we talked about, so.
I've got no issues. So I guess I move to execute the memorandum of agreement between the town of Bolton and Teamsters Union Local 170.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against?
Thank you.
A lot of work, a lot of late nights.
Labor contracts are like the Golden Gate Bridge. Once you get to the end, you go back and start painting the beginning again.
So we have a request from Bolton Access Television to release funds in the amount of $29,817.31 for Bolton Access TV operations.
First, I'm sorry, I have made copies of the email about the babysitting for all of you, so I'll give those to Linda, she can pass them down. Apologize about that. Okay, so, it's our regular quarterly payment. Not too much to say about it, except that it's down slightly from the last one, and I believe that's the first time we've gone down.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a bad omen or not.
I recall it was 30 grand
Yeah,
to change.
exactly. I've been really pleased with the way that it keeps marginally going up. But anyway, we'll see if that is a trend or not.
So it's based on the number of cable subscribers.
Yeah.
This
I mean,
amount.
Well, yeah, it's a complicated thing, but yes, it's the tax that is a fee that's on each of your cable bills. And so part of the reason that the number has been increasing is that if people get bigger plans or whatever, then that ends up increasing the take that we get because it's a percentage on the bill. Conversely, if somebody stops, cuts the cord, then it's different for them, so we'll see. But anyway, so that's our fourth quarter number. And hopefully, Linda, we can work out better how the check flows to us.
Yes.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we approve the request from Bolton Access Television to release the sum of $29,817.31.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay.
And if you are interested in them, I have copies of the annual report that we approved back in November, as well as the mission statement and some goals for the organization. Just so that I have these, and we can address any questions that you want later on. Otherwise, I'm done here.
Great, thank you, Ken.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you send me a copy of those, Ken, the report?
I thought I did, but I will.
Yeah, just, maybe you did.
That's fine.
Okay.
But I'll
Thank
be
you.
happy to send it.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Last is setting the Board of Selectmen's meeting schedule.
So here is the calendar that we had talked about last meeting.
There was a delay requested so everyone could sync their calendars and make sure that these days work for everyone.
I still do for the moment, but.
So it's till May?
Yes, until the, basically until the election.
And so you blacked out the school holidays?
I did not. That's just the here?
No, not mark them, but you
Oh.
just
Did you work around them?
work around the
I
school
did
holiday.
not.
That, if there's,
That would be
It would
February
be
break.
February, which I bet is the
And there's one in April.
20th, I bet that is the week of.
It's usually around,
usually the third week is a.
yeah.
For sure, April 16th, I think, would be one, because it's usually Patriots' Day week.
Yeah, and I think the February one is the vacation week too.
Mhm. So
I
we-
just happen to have a copy of the
Oh,
17-18 school calendar.
There you go.
And let's see, the week of February 19th
Yep.
is a vacation week.
And then April's
April's is the week of the 16th.
bingo. We hit both of them, so.
Then for February, I would suggest doing the 1st and the 15th. Because then, since we're meeting January 18th, that would still be a 2-week gap to the 1st. And that would help us, that would meet that would meet every other week in February and get us past the school vacation. And then, I think April, I think we'd be safe going in the other direction, because the warrant would be done by then, and things ease up a little bit from the budget, so we could do April 12th and April 26th in April. And then may not need, I'm sorry, we could go to May 10th,
Right. Yeah.
and which would be the Thursday after town meeting, but before the election. If that would work.
So the annual town meeting is the 7th?
Seventh.
It is
Yeah.
first Monday in May, yeah.
So that's fine, that would work. All right.
All right, if that works for everyone, great, we'll make that happen.
All right.
And don't forget to please to approve the bills and
You set up.
and sign the payroll warrant.
Yes, I'll send you the schedule.
Make a motion that we approve the bills and the payroll warrants, W18-11 and W18-11A.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any against? And then we have minutes,
Okay.
No minutes.
but are we good?
Maybe.
I know I'm good.
We don't name names
You
on
get to-
camera.
Yeah, I know, but you get to
No.
be Santa Claus.
I know,
tonight.
I will have to, I have to get back to him and take a look at it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So we have
the-
lunch.
Yeah, you haven't gotten any yet.
you have the bills,
I'm
the
behind.
I have
warrants.
no idea what you're talking about.
Yes, it's the minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
What don't we have left is the executive sessions.
There's one place to sign. That whole stack.
2 copies, yeah, just 2 copies.
I missed this.
Did you?
I'll turn this one.
Good.
Thank you. So,
Thank you.
we're gonna go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C period 30A, 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the DPW union, as the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position. The board will not reconvene to open session. Reading the second one?
Yes, please.
And we will continue an executive session pursuant to Mass General Law C 38 21A3 to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining for the police union, as the chair finds that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the board's bargaining position. The board will not reconvene to open session.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Sikansky?
Aye.